Hello and welcome to this video on simplifying fractions. Before we start, I just want to look at some of these questions. What's the biggest number that goes into both 2 and 8? Well, the biggest number that goes into both 2 and 8 is the number 2. Secondly, what's the biggest number that goes into both 3 and 12? 3 is the biggest number that goes into both 3 and 12. What's the biggest number that goes into both 6 and 15? Well, 3 is actually the biggest number that goes into both of those numbers. And finally, what's the biggest number that goes into both 10 and 45? 5 is the biggest number that goes into both of those. Now, why have I looked at these questions? Well, the number here that we have given in each instance here is called the highest common factor. So it's the highest, which means it's the biggest number that goes into both those numbers. It's common, so it's common to both, in this case, 10 and 45. 5 is the highest common to both 10 and 45 factor. And factor is a number that divides exactly into another with no remainder. So it's called the highest common factor. HCF, highest common factor. And it's really important that we can identify what the highest common factor is in two numbers, because this is how we simplify fractions completely. Let's have a look at some examples. So here we need to think about the biggest number that goes into both 2 and 10. Well, the biggest number that goes into 2 and 10 is 2. It's the biggest number that goes into both 2 and 10. That means we divide through by that highest common factor. We divide through by 2. And if I do 2 divided by 2, I get 1, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So that is 1/5. 2/10 simplifies to 1/5. And it's also worth bearing in mind that these two are equivalent fractions. So 2/10 is equivalent to 1/5. It would take up the same value. They just look slightly different, but they have the same value. 3/9. What is the highest common factor, the biggest number that goes into both 3 and 9? Well, 3 is the highest number that goes into both 3 and 9. So we divide through by that highest common factor. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. So 3/9 simplifies to 1/3. 8/12. What's the highest number that divides into both 8 and 12? Well, the highest common factor of 8 and 12 is actually 4, so we're going to divide through by 4. Now, I just want to say one thing. Lots of students do this in a number of steps. You might think, well, I could just divide this by 2. You could divide this by 2. Let's do that. If we divide this by 2, I'm going to get another fraction that's equivalent, but it's not in its simplest form. Okay, 4/6 is equivalent to 8/12, but it's not 8/12 fully simplified. Okay, so we have to divide through by the highest common factor. Okay, we could divide by 2 and then divide by 2 again. If I divided by 2 again, then I would get to its most simplified form, 2/3. But how do we do that in one fell swoop? Well, we divide 3 by the highest common factor. And the highest common factor is 4. So let's divide 3 by that. If we divide top and bottom by 4, we get 2/3. Similarly here, some people might think, well, I can divide top and bottom by 2 to get 9/12, but then you would have to divide 3 by 3 after that to ensure that you got it in its fully simplified state. Well, how do we do it? How do we simplify it fully? In one fell swoop, we divide by the highest common factor, which in this case, the highest common factor is 6. 18 divided by 6 is 3, and 24 divided by 6 is 4, 3/4. So we are aiming to divide 3 by the highest common factor because that will ensure we get it in its most simple form, its simplest form. You can go in jumps of 2 and 3, and you can keep going until you've broken it down completely. You can absolutely do that, there's no problem, as long as you end up with its most simplified form. But the easiest way to get there in one fell swoop is to divide 3 by the highest common factor. Okay, let's look at some more examples. 4 and 20, what's the highest number that goes into both 4 and 20? 4 is the biggest number, is the highest common factor of both 4 and 20. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. 20 divided by 4 is 5. 1/5. 9/21, the highest common factor there is 3. So we divide by 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 21 divided by 3 is 7. (56) and 72, so getting into some big numbers now, but this is where knowing your times tables really helps, so do try and commit those to memory if you can. 56 and 72, I can identify that they are both in the 8 times table, so 8 is the highest common factor here. If I divide 56 by 8, I get 7. And if I divide 72 by 8, I get 9. Ooh, my pen's a bit stuck there. I get 9. 7/9. Here, the highest common factor is 10. Again, you could say, well, I could divide by 2 and then divide by 2 again. But if you can identify the highest common factor first off, that will save you some time. So, highest common factor here is 10. Divide the top by 10, I get 8. Divide the bottom by 10, I get 11. 8/11. Okay, here are some fractions for you to simplify fully. So please simplify these fully by dividing through by the highest common factor. Here is a little tables grid at the top right hand corner to help you. So you are trying to simplify these fractions fully by dividing through by the highest common factor. So pause the video now, have a go at these, and resume the video to see the answers. I will show you the answers now. So the numbers in red are those fractions in their simplest form. Well done for having a go at those.